Okay, we are now recording.
Hi, we are here with Erik Wolf, the president of World Food Travel Association. It's a pleasure. It's an honor for me to interview you. And this is going to be with the podcast with Media Hotel Radio, the first web radio dedicated to professionals working in the tourism and hospitality industry. So thank you very much, Erik, for being here. Even though you are in the United States, where are you exactly? Tell us.
Thank you, Concetta. I'm in Portland, Oregon.
So how many hours of difference there are, more or less?
It's just the morning for us now. We're just getting started, and for you, it's almost your dinner time.
Yeah. And okay, we're gonna talk today about your association and what you do and what is the purpose, and also we're gonna discover what Italian can do even more better to value their food and beverage items. So let's start. Who are you for Italian people that doesn't know you, and why your association?
Well, my name is Erik Wolf, and I founded the World Food Travel Association back in 2003, and I've served as the executive director of the association ever since then. And in many ways, I'm regarded as the founder of the food tourism industry because of a white paper, which is like a research paper that I wrote in 2001. And this paper it's like an article, and it talked about the value of culinary tourism in travel. And the purpose of the article was to show to professionals in the food, beverage, travel, and hospitality industries the potential for celebrating food and drink as an attraction for visitors. So just like people will visit a museum, or they'll go to an amusement park and they'll ride the roller coaster, well, food and beverage are also attractions. And this article that I wrote became very popular, and it gave the momentum to create the association 2 years later.
Okay, thank you. And when you started to build your association, so what were the challenges, and what kind of activities are you doing right now?
Well, I think the challenges in the beginning were to gain momentum, to get enough, we say in English, eyeballs, to get enough people paying attention to what we were doing. And it's funny, in the beginning, many people, I'd say for the first 10 years at least, people really didn't understand fully what we do. They thought culinary tourism was about gourmet or wine tourism, and they didn't understand that it was really about food, and not just expensive food, but street food, any kind of food experience, food tours, food factories. And so I think people now really do understand that. We went through a name change in 2012, and we removed the word culinary from our organization's name, and I think that helped. But I also think that the media helped a lot to set the stage for what we mean by food tourism. And so the kinds of things we do, we have our fingers in a lot of pies, we say in English. We're doing a lot of things. We're known primarily as an educational institution. So anything having to do with education, certification, speeches, training, master classes, research, those kinds of activities, those are our primary activities that we do. We do a little bit of consulting work, we have a little bit of publishing, and then we also have our community that we manage.
Yeah, thank you very much. And as you know, I also met you in London in the World Trade Market exhibition, and I collaborate with Roberta Garibaldi. She's the Italian ambassador for your association. Yes. And what can you tell us about the research, the great research you made in 2016 about Foodie Travellers, about foodies? And so to tell to Italian professionals what does it mean, and so in order that they can think about some strategies.
Of course. This research is called the Food Travel Monitor, and it was published in June of 2016. And the research included data from 11 countries. And Italy was one of the countries that we included. The markets that we included were the larger, better known traveling markets. So United States, United Kingdom, Germany, France, Spain, Italy, Mexico, Australia, China, Ireland. There might be one or two more, but those are primary markets for outbound visitors. And the research was really significant because it was the largest study ever conducted in the world on food and beverage travelers. And what we learned in the research, I think one of the most important things is that it confirmed some of the earlier research that had been done. So it's as a researcher, you like to see consistency, or you like to be able to see differences. And for us, it was very good to see that the research that we'd done in 2010, 2007, 2013, there was the consistency about people's behaviors, people's income, people's education, people's ages. And we realized that food and beverage travel is something that everybody does, regardless of their age, regardless of their income. And we also looked a little deeper into something called psychoculinary profiling, which is a concept that we pioneered with our 2010 research. And what psychoculinary profiling does is identifies food purchase behavior. So when you go out to eat, or just when you go out to eat, and let's say that your friend wants to go to this new French restaurant down the street, but you hate it, and you want to go to a new Japanese place, and they're not interested. So the difference is not necessarily the cuisine choice. It's more about things like the experience, the ambiance, the way the food is prepared, the service, the overall look and feel of the restaurant. And
I lost you for 30 seconds. So just for Japanese, and then I lost you a little bit.
Oh, okay. So basically, just to summarize, psychoculinary profiling explains the difference in why you behave differently when you select food and beverage. Differently from your friends, differently from your family. That's why you don't always agree on the same things. There's 13 different kinds of behaviors, and authentic is the number one choice, and vegetarian is the smallest choice, but people can have up to 3 of these behaviors. So it was really interesting to see how people varied across countries. Sometimes they're consistent, sometimes they were different. So that was very interesting. For example, the Indians, India was a country we studied. The Indians were the largest vegetarian respondents. No surprise there, but it was interesting to see the proof right there.
Yeah, and do you know that Italy in Europe, it's the number one country that has more numbers of vegetarian and vegan people in Europe. It's the first place with the 10% of the population.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah. And this is the reason why hoteliers and restaurants also, they need to know this kind of numbers, so that they can satisfy and better this unconventional guests, as I call them,
Well, that's good to know about vegetarians, but I would hate to be gluten-free in Italy because of all your great bread and pasta.
Okay. But I can tell you that I know lots of how can I say companies about bread or pasta that are also artisanal, homemade, that are very great. And I'm working with chefs also in Italy, that they can make a better and healthy food for the guests with the ingredients that are very, very special. So not that kind of industrial stuff that celiac people that don't like too much, and that they are full of sugar, for example. So, but if you come to Italy, I will let you know, and I will show you. I will give you an unconventional food and beverage experience, so you can really find that Italian products, food and beverage, also gluten-free, can be very exciting to eat.
That sounds great. I look forward to it.
Yeah. And so how often do you travel, Erik?
You know, it really varies. Last fall was my busiest quarter ever for travel. I was traveling constantly. This spring has been very quiet, so it just depends. You know, I don't know. I mean, yeah, it just it's very hard to say.
And since now, I imagine you have visited all the countries, maybe uh, Asia, and well, which one do you prefer, or have you had the most exciting experience about food and beverage?
Well, you're right. I've been to a lot of countries. It's been a wonderful journey for me, and I think I've found great food and drink in a lot of places. I can't say that there's one place in particular. I mean, I really love Italian food, but we had wonderful food in Jordan. I
Hmm.
love Singapore for food, Ecuador, even Canada. I have had some great food in Canada. So, you know, I can find the great food. And I think it's because of the people I know. You know, if I went somewhere on my own, just like any traveler, you would often go to the places that are familiar. You know, you might find a chain restaurant or coffee shop because you know that from home, and that's very familiar to you. But because of the work that I do and the professionals that I know, I've been very fortunate that they take me to their favorite places. So I go straight to the locals only places, and I've eaten very well over the past few years.
Yeah, the connection with local people, it's very important. It's maybe the right recipe, I should
It's
say.
essential, yes.
Yeah. And so what are you looking for when you travel, especially? Do you have something in mind, or you just go and let's see what happens?
You know, I think people travel for different reasons. Sometimes people travel to visit friends and relatives. Sometimes we travel for business. Sometimes we travel for sightseeing. Sometimes it's history, architecture, the local culture. Some people do travel just for food and drink. So it really depends. For me, I think, you know, if I'm going to choose a destination to take a holiday, there has to be a combination of things that work well for me. So just like you know, in Las Vegas, the machines where, you know, you pull the handle and it's cherries, pineapples, and
Yeah.
apples. It's got to be all cherries across for me. So it has to have great food and drink. I have to like the feel of the city. It's like, just, you know, it's like the umami of the urban culture. It needs to just feel right, and I have to like the people. I think the people have to be nice, and, you know, some degree of warmth to make me want to go there.
Okay, thank you. And in your opinion, what can Italy or Italian do even better to valorize their food and beverage items, in your opinion?
Well, I think Italy does have great food, and what we realized from the research that we completed last year is that Italians seem to know that they have great food.
Yeah,
and
I agree with that.
and when Italians travel, it was obvious to us in the data that came out that Italians really don't expect much from food when they travel, because when you
Yeah.
come from a country that has such great food, everywhere else in the world is worse by comparison. So I think that's a great position to be in, because you have a very, very rich food culture. But at the same time, I think what can happen is if you get complacent and don't see what is happening on the other side of your food culture, which is the industrialization of food, large factories, uh, multinational corporations, bringing, you know, products from other countries, the standardization. So, you know, the Nutella that you get there is the same as the Nutella we get in the States, and you know, things. I think you start to lose some of that food culture. So what will happen, in maybe not in the next 5 years, but in the next 50 years, you will have a dilution of your food culture. Or what I say, I wrote an article on my blog called The Dumbing Down of Food, where food is becoming so basic. So, I mean, you know, you go to a restaurant like a McDonald's or a Burger King or something like that, and the product is very consistent in any country in the world. You go to Starbucks and the coffee that you get is consistent anywhere in the world. Now, from a corporate perspective, that's good because you keep costs down. You can source things from one purchasing agent, and it's just easier for a corporation. But what it means is that you are losing your culture. You're losing what it means to have the local food and the recipes, the preparation, the camaraderie. Those things are becoming diluted more and more. And just like we're seeing with hotels, you know, a lot of the smaller hotels are going out of business. You see this in stores too. A lot of really, I think you see it in retail a lot, where a lot of the smaller shops can't stay in business because the rents keep going up. So the only companies that can afford the rent is the multinational corporations. So you see Gap and you see Zara and all these other big international brands on the streets. And then what happened to your local retail stores? Well, the same is happening with hotels. It's happening with restaurants and so on. So, you know, maybe it's taking more time with restaurants, but I think you have to be aware of what's happening and always fight for whatever is going to preserve your local food and drink culture. Because if you don't fight for it, if you're not aware of it, it will vanish.
Yeah, thank you very much for this kind of suggestion. And I promise you, I'm gonna work to preserve all. And this is what I do with my job, to preserve the local producer and telling the story, our beautiful story, thanks to the food and beverage that we have, the story of local territory. And
let me put it this way, Concetta.
Yeah.
How would you feel if Pizza Hut became the only ambassador for Italian food in the whole world?
No, I don't want this happen.
That would be pretty sad, right?
Yeah, of course, but it's because it's not the real Italian pizza, and we have lots to tell about Italian pizza. So there is a great story behind. So, and you talked about hotels. You know, I'm the inventor of the unconventional breakfast format, and I would like to know what do you think about breakfast in hotels? So we were talking about this. Your opinion? What they can improve. So
I think the breakfast is often called the most important meal of the day, and I think it's a meal that can very easily be ignored, unfortunately. And many people just want to get up and go, and they don't celebrate breakfast really. I think what I've seen a lot in places like Italy is people will stop in somewhere for a coffee and a little croissant. You know, you stand up, you eat it, and then you go. And that's not really breakfast either. There's two regions that I think do breakfast really well. And one is Greece. Greece has their greekbreakfast.gr website, which is a project of the Hellenic Hotel Association. And what they have done is to make sure that all of the Greek hotels that are members really focus on the Greek breakfast, and they use products that are coming from their parts of Greece. So you might have something on Santorini, you might have something different in Athens, something different in Thessaloniki.
Yeah.
And when you go into the hotel lobby at a hotel in Greece, you see the different foods, you smell the different foods, you see how many people are there, and you want to stop and eat breakfast. Unlike an American hotel, for example, where you can't wait to get out because, well, first of all, the food's gross, but second of all, you know, in an American hotel experience, there's this rush, you know, you have to get out as quickly as possible. But in a Greek hotel, there's a reason to stay and enjoy. And I think another part of the world that does this very well is Scandinavia. With their amazing breakfast buffets of very high quality food. So you've got the wonderful meats and sausages and fishes. You have all the different yogurts and all the different grain cereals. A lot of it is sourced organically. And so I think that whereas the Greek breakfast is much more local to Greek delicacies, the Scandinavian one is a mix of what people would traditionally expect, like breads and toasts and cereals. But then it also celebrates a lot of things that they do really nicely in Scandinavia. And when you go to a hotel in Sweden or Denmark or Norway, you want to stop and have a great breakfast. And I think that if you have a really wonderful breakfast, first of all, it gives you a great memory of the hotel experience, and you want to recommend that hotel. But also, it keeps you full. I know that if I don't have breakfast first thing, I'm hungry by 11 in the morning.
Yeah.
And then that's a little too early for lunch, and then it messes up the whole day. But if you have a big breakfast, you can actually skip lunch or have a lunch like at 3 o'clock, but just have something small, like a little snack, and then have a dinner later. So I think, and also when you talk about obesity, people are eating in the wrong direction. They're eating the most food in the evening, and followed by lunch, and then breakfast is always the least amount of food. But to help improve the obesity epidemic, you should have the biggest meal at breakfast, the next smallest meal at lunch, and a very, very small dinner. So in many ways, I think that breakfast, I think, is an opportunity it's something that doesn't get a lot of focus in many countries, and I think that could be the next big thing for many hoteliers.
Yeah, and well, in Italy, Italian people, unfortunately, they used to have breakfast quickly. But I can also tell you, in hotels, when they go to hotels, they pretend to eat differently from home, because they also pay the breakfast included in the room. So they expect something special, something big. And so this is the reason why also I do what I do, and especially also to give the same rights to those people with special food needs.
Yeah.
And for unconventional guests, in your opinion and for your experience, when you travel, which country have you seen that is more respectful comparison with this kind of guest?
I would say that people who have dietary preferences, whether it is vegetarian and vegan, whether it is halal and kosher, whether it is gluten-free,
lactose-free,
all of those different things, I think that it's probably easiest for someone with those preferences to travel in the United States. Americans are very good at dissecting the food experience. So, it's funny.
Good to know.
Yeah, we have these preferences, and we demand them, and the restaurants cater to them. And I think that Canada is not far behind the United States in respecting that. I think that the idea, vegetarian is probably the easiest one to get, because you can do so much, whether it's you serve someone pasta or vegetables or a salad, or a casserole made of squash or something like that, or healthy grains like millet or farro or anything like that. I think it's relatively easy to do vegetarian. And when you travel in certain places like India, for example, it's very, very common. But I think things like gluten-free are much harder. I think a lot of times people will say that people think they're gluten-free when they're really maybe not, and then the people who are gluten-free get mad because they say, well, hey, I have a problem. But I think there needs to be some education too, because it's a common knowledge, but not well publicized, that many Americans who have trouble eating wheat here in the United States can go to Italy and eat bread and pasta and have no trouble. And the reason is because we use largely genetically modified wheat here, and we also use a different kind of wheat than you use in Italy. So because our wheat is genetically modified, and because it's a different kind of wheat, it stands to reason that people will have some trouble here. But when you go to Italy, where you have less GMO and use a different kind of wheat, and you process your wheat differently too, then your body can process it better. It's more natural food. So anyway, I think that like you said, I think the States and Canada probably do it the best. I don't want to say the best, they do it the easiest for people with special dietary concerns, but the rest of the world is paying attention.
Yeah, what I've noticed, for example, there is a big difference between restaurants and hotels, and there is more respect in restaurants, but in hotels they are, especially for the breakfast, they are very there is lots to do to work for this kind of things. And for example, for lactose intolerant people, as I work here in Italy with the Italian Lactose Free Association, they gave a great number. I mean, in Italy, we have the 50% of the population that is lactose intolerant. And in the world, we have the 70% of people that is lactose intolerant. So this is a new challenge for hotels or hospitality industry, for the tourism, also for the food and beverage tourism section.
I think that there's something in hotels that the food and beverage managers of hotels often feel like they have to serve food because people are traveling, and they look at it more as an obligation than a feature of the hotel.
Yeah.
And for example, I was remembering a conference I was at in Spain, and the hotel did a buffet breakfast, but they didn't put labels on anything. And so you had people who they were curious about something, they didn't know what it was, but they were scared to try it. They didn't know. Yeah. So,
and they were scared to ask too, also normally.
Well, yeah, and the staff's probably not going to speak their language. And so what happens, they go with something familiar, something safe. They'll have cereal or a piece of toast or something, or a yogurt, and then they miss all the great local foods. So I think just like if a hotel food and beverage manager doesn't put the labels out because they're not thinking about the experience for the guest. The same thing with the specialty foods. Now, at this exact same hotel that didn't label anything, they did label gluten-free bread, but it was put in the side, in the back, almost forgotten about.
Yeah.
And you really
they tend to hide then, yeah.
Very hidden, yes. And you almost had to know to ask for it that they actually had it. And I think that, you don't need to make a big deal out of it, because I've been to vegetarian restaurants where the meals have been great, or I've been at a regular restaurant where I've ordered a vegetarian dish and the meal has been great. I don't need to eat meat at every meal, or I don't need to eat bread that has gluten at every meal, or I don't need to eat dairy with every meal. So if a food and beverage manager at a hotel is creative, they can actually feature main courses, the main dish, or you know how they sometimes have 2 or 3 choices. You can have 1 or 2 choices that have no gluten, that have no dairy, and one that's vegetarian, and make them really good quality. And you don't need then to put so many labels on it to make a big deal of it, because I think there's a stigma attached with, oh, you're a vegetarian, or oh, you're gluten-free. People look at people like there's something wrong with them, and it's just how people are. So I think that by not making a big deal of it, you'll actually have more success.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing this kind of comments, because this is my mission, so to educate these professionals, because there is no education and there's something new. Also because in Europe, I don't know in the United States, but in Europe from December 2014, it comes a law that tells about allergens, and so this is the reason why professionals from one day to another, they were obliged to understand and to deal with the law, not because of the guests, but because there is a law that came out in 2014. And so this is why there's no education, and we were going to start from tourism school, so young people, but also in universities, there are no masters talking about this kind of items. Yeah. And so I'm going to talk with all this university about tourism, hospitality management, and with the association in order to get the culture, to create the culture. So this is the big deal for us in Italy, but not only in Italy. I've seen in all Europe, especially for hotels industry.
So we are aligned in our view.
Yeah. Thank you very much. And so I know you came out with a new kind of master too, an online the tourism and the food and beverage business in order to help people to understand how they can make food and beverage tours. Would you like to talk also a little bit about this? I think I was one of the first one to get this course. It was amazing, and thank you very much for this.
Oh, my pleasure. Well, I think that what we always try to improve everything that we offer. So we started our certification program back in 2008, and it is updated every year, and it continues to evolve and become better and better and more complete and better respected every year. And so something that we've just done, well, we started to offer some professional entrepreneur training 2 years ago, and what we realized was that this needed to we needed to kind of combine the certification with the entrepreneur training and do some other things. So what we've done now, we still have a professional certification, but the certification now is comprised of different master classes. And the master classes are courses that you can take, and they're different subjects. So one is how to design a food and beverage tour business. Another one is how to create a food and beverage event that will attract visitors, and so on. And so you take 3 of these different courses that you want, and you can combine them to create your own certification. So I think that that is something that we're very excited about. It allows a level of customization now that we didn't have before. And we're also using a new learning platform that's absolutely flawless. It's outstanding. And we've seen huge student satisfaction improve really from what we used to offer. So we're very excited about our new master classes and our new course that's specifically designing a food and beverage tour business.
Okay, thank you. And finally, would you like to talk us about the award? I know there was something like a challenge for people. It was really interesting.
Sure. Yeah, we have. We started 2 years ago an awards process or recognition for people in businesses in the industry and their excellence in food and beverage tourism experience. So we have just over 10 categories. It could be things like food and beverage tours, food and beverage lodging experience, food and beverage retail stores, cruises, different kinds of experiences, anything that has to do with food and beverage experience. So it could be a wine tasting, a beer factory, anything like that. So for example, the company that won the best water experience for tours was actually a barge tour in Europe that focuses on beer.
Wow, great.
Yeah, so little things like that are kind of unexpected. So the awards are the first awards in the world that focus on excellence in food and beverage tourism. You have travel awards elsewhere, you have food and beverage awards elsewhere. What we're trying to do is focus on the overall experience for visitors. So when you go on that barge tour on European rivers to learn about beers in great detail, that is a fantastic experience, and that's the kind of thing that we recognize and reward. And they're called the Food Trucking Awards, and the applications open in October, and winners are announced in the first quarter of the following year.
Oh, okay. So I can tell to Italian food and beverage companies that they should have this opportunity to participate to this challenge, because we have lots of great histories and also about beer. And so I just have known some of this here in Lombardy, and so I'm excited to tell them about this kind of context. So I'm really sure they're going to have something to tell to the world.
It's funny. We have a couple of ambassadors in Italy, and last year we only got 2 or 3 entries from Italy, and I think that was because maybe because they had to read the instructions in English was a problem, but also they were even more scared to reply in English, and they should know that actually there are several judges that participate. We had 1 or 2 judges who were Italian, so they could read entries in Italian, and I can read Italian. I can't speak Italian very well, but I can read it. So among the 3 of us, we should be able to process any entries from Italy.
Okay, so thank you for telling me this, because we're gonna work for this, because I don't want that the language should be an obstacle.
Yeah, they can
It's a
submit
shame.
it in Italian, and we'll get there.
Okay.
We'll get there in the end. We'll understand.
Okay. So, talking about beverage, do you prefer beer or wine?
Both. All of the above.
Or both, okay. I'm not going to ask you which kind of wine or from which country the wine, because I know maybe you have to be democratic about this, this question.
I find great food and beverage everywhere. So, I mean, one day I can have a Slovenian wine that's amazing. The next day it can be, something unusual from Mexico. Mexico makes wines. Did you know that?
Not so so good. It's not well known in Italy. I mean, the Mexican wine. We know better the Californian wines.
Of course, yeah. Anyway.
Okay, I will discourse something about Mexico. And so, as you told that you know something about Italian words, so what would you like to say to Italian professionals in the tourism industry in Italy?
Mi piace molto la cucina italiana.
Okay. Thank you very much. And
my pleasure.
Thank you for sharing your story, something about your association. And if people want to find more about your association, tell us about your website, your social media contacts, everything, so they can reach out.
It's just worldfoodtravel.org.
And what about Facebook or also?
We're on all the social media. All they have to do is type in World Food Travel, and it will come up on Twitter, Facebook, everything.
Yeah, you have Instagram, Pinterest, Twitter, and everything. So okay.
Yeah.
So thank you very much. It has been a pleasure to talk to you and to share this interview. And I'm sure Italian professional will get lots of information to think how they can do better, even more better their job. Thank you very much.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.